So, good morning.
Good morning.
We're here at SAIS on April 6, 2017. And I'm Margaret Hart-Frondorf, Director of SAIS Alumni Relations, and I'm here with James Whiteley, who is here for his 50th celebration of since graduating from SAIS. And it's quite a milestone. And we wanted to take this opportunity to talk with you a little bit and have you share some of your memories of SAIS. So why don't I start right there? What is a vivid memory do you have of when you were here 50 years ago?
Well, I have, of course, a very vivid memory of the actual building, which is now sitting across the street from us. And I agree, it does look very much like the State Department. But I had just essentially come back from overseas, 7 years. I had worked for CARE for 7 years before coming to SAIS. And I had interviewed at a couple of places, but SAIS seemed to be the right place, both in terms of what I had done previously. When I was working for CARE, I was in Korea, then Bangladesh for a very short time, fortunately, and then in the Philippines and Colombia, ending up in Greece. And there were a couple of people, the ambassador in Greece, and somebody named Richard Westerby, who was with the World Bank. And I had expressed to them, I felt that CARE was not something I wanted to continue to do for the rest of my life. And they said, maybe you ought to look into a master's program. And Richard Westerby directed me toward Harvard, but that's a more government-oriented, and I didn't really think that I wanted to go into the government. So, long story short, SAIS seemed to be appropriate. I also had looked at Princeton also, but, that seemed very, very academic, and it didn't seem that would give me the same kind of breadth that I would get at SAIS. And I think that turned out to be true. So, anyway, I rented an apartment over here on 16th Street, not very far from the school, and I had that apartment for the next 2 years. I don't think I could have afforded the current rates on apartments. And anyway, it served me very well. I guess I found the atmosphere kind of right up to my expectations. I liked the people, the other students that I was meeting. I liked several of the professors. When I look back on it, for instance, that first term, they had this thing that we used to call the Wide, Wide World, which I assume they still have, and it's various readings from around. We used to joke about it, but it only in retrospect did we appreciate, I think, fully how good a base it provided for the rest of our academic stay here. I developed some fairly close friendships. One in particular who became the best man at our wedding. We made our own social life at the time. There wasn't much. I guess I have a lot of good memories of individual professors. I had essentially forgotten a lot of the economics that I took in college, and when I got into international economics, I was not doing well, and so I went into consultation with a guy by the name of Harold Malmgren at the time. He was very helpful to me, and I ended up with an A in the course at the end of it. I certainly was not doing that well throughout. The other influential people, well, Isaiah Frank at the time was very helpful. I wish I had had more courses with him. There were a couple professors that I was not enthralled with, but I think that's inevitable in any academic situation. I have Professor Marshall was, I really enjoyed him. And he was a guy you could sit down and talk to in the cafeteria, when you just were drifting in, and he was sitting there. The one thing that sticks in my mind is some of the brevity of some of his assignments, which really forced you to, how do you get something that you could go on for 4 or 5 pages and boil it down into a single page or even a couple paragraphs.
It's still true today. That is a key skill.
It is.
That is taught. Mm-hmm.
And it is so useful that I found getting into a business life, into the corporate world.
Talk a little bit more about your trajectory after SAIS.
Well, interestingly enough, Bob Botcher, who unfortunately couldn't make it this time, was arranging a special dinner sponsored by Citibank for those that might be interested in going into banking. And I told Bob that I really wasn't that interested in banking. So I passed on the invitation, and lo and behold, well, when I got out of SAIS immediately, a friend of mine who has a number of businesses in New York kept pushing me to come to New York. He wanted me to be the general manager for the operation. And I had completely run out of money, and so I went to New York. And then, that kind of strained our friendship, and so I started looking around, and I found that the banks were very interested in people that had had international experience. And so I interviewed a number of banks and ended up originally with Marine Midland. Because they were very aggressive. I liked the people much better. They were much less bureaucratic than, for instance, a Chase. Chase seemed to me, because I had talked to a number of government areas here in the State Department, the Department of Agriculture, for instance, and I just felt that I didn't want to get into a bureaucratic situation.
And you traveled quite a bit with the bank, did you not?
I did. I
internationally.
I was first in the commodities area, and then I was assigned to Asia, and went back and forth a couple of times to Tokyo, and then came back, and then we got married. And the day after our wedding, we were on our way to Tokyo with a brief stopover for a honeymoon in Hawaii on the way there. Set up housekeeping. That's where we set up housekeeping, actually, in Tokyo. And then the bank wanted to open an office, and I was assigned to open the office in Korea. So we were the first representative office. There were the three majors, Bank of America, Citi, and Chase, had branches there at the time, but we were a corporate banking office. We were there for 4 years, came back, did an assignment of handling Southeast Asia from New York. And then, because of the contacts that I had made from people with Chemical Bank, I got hired over to Chemical and was handling East Asia, which was Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, from New York. And then that developed into handling the institutional business of Japan, Korea, and Taiwan worldwide. So I was traveling around the United States to the various offices of those banks, to London, to, of course, to the home offices in Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Then the opportunity came to open an office for corporate banking in Western Canada in Vancouver, and that sounded pretty good to both of us, particularly because I
got to make it work for the family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, I had two cousins in Vancouver.
Nice.
So
your SAIS degree, really, the international component just took you where you wanted to be, and global.
It did.
That's great.
And when I got back, I was hired to come back, and I worked for 3 years as assistant to the chairman of the bank, and that was fine, but it was not something I wanted to get back into the business end, to dealing with customers, which I found much more interesting. And so at that time, unfortunately, there were no real opportunities. The corporate world was changing, banking in particular. There just were not the same kind of opportunities overseas. And at that time also, I think that I really wanted to stay back home. And so I ended up in a number of corporate banking.
So here
positions.
you are, 50 years later, and got a lot of young people at the school now, and they grapple with some of the same questions that you did when you were thinking about not only graduate school, but where to afterwards. So what advice would you give a graduate student at SAIS today?
Well, I think it would be the same that I think a number of us gave to SAIS shortly after we graduated, and that was get more finance, get more economics. Because if you go into the business world, that's going to be of great value to you. I supplemented my education in some programs. Fortunately, I was able to do a special program at the Harvard Business School and Columbia, and then also another one in advanced corporate finance at Rutgers. And those really kind of supplemented. But I wish that I had had more business experience, more business courses. We had statistics here, and that was a good course. But I think the school has now appreciated that, realized it, and is offering that kind of opportunity, those special courses to.
Not only that, but we have joint programs with Wharton and other business schools.
I was aware of that. Yeah.
So that's
Carey is at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Carey is actually in.
It's in Baltimore, but they have a satellite classrooms down here in Washington.
I noticed that. Yeah, there's something on one of the buildings down there.
So you can actually say your advice. We've taken a little bit of it already, which is expand our offerings and prepare young people for today's world.
And I was aware of that, and I think that's great. I met old man Carey a couple of times at some of the SAIS functions in New York City.
Yeah, nice, good.
And he's a kind of crusty old guy, but
he's a good man. He put his resources in the right place to help the next generation of students. So,
yeah.
Last comment before we close. Anything that you want to add to our
Let's see.
viewers on YouTube and other places that might see this interview?
I don't know about that.
We'll put you on CNN.
Yeah.
World News Tonight. And we can close. We have a wonderful day coming up with the luncheon. That's going to be honoring your class and the milestone of 50 years today. And you had a wonderful dinner last night with classmates at the Cosmos Club and
we did.
a reunion. So we thank you for being here today, traveling and joining us in Washington. So.
Well, there are a couple of people that could not come, and I'm sorry about that because I would have liked to have seen them, but nevertheless,
it's a good core group.
We had a good core group.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and it's been a great
You're very
conversation, and we'll close. Thank you.